deal between families forced my fiancé Marco Corvini to marry me. My parents were dead. His obsession was Isabella Falcone, the princess of our rivals. In the end, Marco devoured my family's empire and threw me to the wolves. He paraded Isabella on his arm like a prize he'd won. 20 years later, I was on my deathbed. My own son, our son, held the poison. He said I was useless, that his father needed the Falcone family's power. Then I opened my eyes. I was back on the day of my blood oath. This time, to save my family, I didn't sign my name on the pact. I signed hers, Isabella Falcone's. As for me, I took the fortune my parents left me and disappeared. This time, I wouldn't be the fool bleeding for a man who was never mine. 20 years of marriage ended with my murder. My husband, Marco Corvini, and my son were the ones to carry it out. Of course, he'd already devoured my family's empire. All for Isabella Falcone, the princess of our rivals. I opened my eyes. I was back in the church on the day of my blood oath with Marco, the day after my parents were buried. In the name of Romano and Corvini, we witnessed this blood oath. An oath to bind two empires, in blood and in law. The priest's voice boomed through the cavernous halls of Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago. My fiancé, Marco, stood beside me. He held the ceremonial dagger, a family heirloom. But his eyes were locked on Isabella Falcone in the back pew. Just like the last time, she wore a blood-red silk dress, a victor's smirk plastered on her face. I recognized the sapphire necklace, the showstopper from the last Sotheby's auction. Looks like Marco spared no expense to keep her happy. She knew Marco loved her. And me? I was just the sacrifice on the altar. Memories of my past life sliced through my heart. My wedding night, I waited for him in my new silk nightgown. All night, Marco never came. He was busy comforting Isabella, who was supposedly shaken up by our ceremony. She's a guest, Samara. Your family understands. He fed me that lie for 20 years. And for 20 years, I fought him with the only weapons I had. My father's old guard and my grip on the family business. But he was patient. A termite eating away at my foundation one piece at a time. He spent 2 decades isolating me, stripping me of my power, waiting. He waited until our son came of age, the rightful heir to inherit everything. Only then, when I had served my purpose, did I truly become useless. Until our son stood over my deathbed with poison. You're useless now, Mom. Dad needs the Falcones. Until Marco leaned in close, his final words a twist of the knife. Did you really think I could love a tool? You were always so naive, Samara. My nails dug into my palms, drawing blood. The sharp pain pulled me from the spiral of memory. It made me sharp. Now, this man was about to play the same game. But this time, I wouldn't be his pawn. Marco, I said, my voice soft. He finally tore his gaze away from Isabella. What? Impatient. Like I was a stranger he couldn't stand. This blood pact? I asked. Did you read it carefully? He frowned. Of course I did. You think I'd make that kind of mistake? My heart felt like it was ripping in two. Even here, before God, at the altar, his voice dripped with disgust for me. I just wanted to confirm the bride's name, I said, keeping my voice smooth. Marco glanced at the pact, scoffing. Samara Romano. Who the hell else would it be? The contempt in his eyes was all the guarantee I needed. The moment he turned to the priest to confirm the details, I moved. My hands trembled, but my will was steel. I switched the pact on the altar with an identical one I'd hidden in my sleeve. This new version had one small change. Once signed, this pact was family law. Unbreakable. Marco wanted Isabella? Fine. I'd give her to him. I pricked my finger with the tip of the dagger, my blood dripping onto the new name. The pain almost brought tears to my eyes. Not from the cut, but because 20 years of misery were finally ending. A single drop of my blood hit the page, landing squarely on the name I'd written there. Isabella Falcone. The oath is sealed, the priest declared, his voice like it was coming from a great distance. Marco nodded, satisfied, a triumphant glint in his eye. He thought he'd played everyone perfectly. He had no idea he'd just chained himself to the woman he actually wanted. And me? I was finally free. After the ceremony, the guests drifted away. Marco went straight to Isabella, whispering in her ear. She laughed, a sweet, cruel sound, making sure everyone saw her with the heir apparent. No one noticed me in the corner, just like for the last 20 years. I went back to the Romano estate and straight to my room. I opened the safe and took out the documents for the secret trust fund my mother left me. $50 million. Before she died, she had gripped my hand. Samara, if you ever need to run, use this money. Make a new life for yourself. I didn't understand her then. I understood now. My mother had been a sacrifice, too. Another political marriage. Her lifetime of pain had bought me my key to escape. I was grabbing my passport and cards when I heard Marco's voice outside the heavy oak door. He was on the phone. His voice was so tender, I almost didn't recognize it. Don't worry, Isabella. The blood oath is just a formality. My hand froze. Once the pact is official, I'll have a legitimate reason to get rid of her. I stared, my eyes wide. In my last life he was a rabbit, cautious, scared of the power I wielded. This time he saw my silent hatred and mistook it for weakness. The fool. He was trying to make his move early. You sure that little bitch won't cause any trouble? Isabella's laugh, sharp as glass, cut through the oak door. I heard Marco's voice, dripping with an affection he never once showed me. If she breathes a word out of line, I'll make her disappear. For good. I stood in the doorway of the study. Marco was hanging up the phone, a flush on his face from the tenderness of his call with Isabella. When he saw me, it vanished, replaced by an icy guard. Samara, what are you doing here? His tone was for an unwelcome stranger. The old me would have cried, would have asked him why he was so cold. Now I just wanted to laugh. This is my house, Marco. Or did you forget? I let the words hang in the air. Until Marco finished devouring the Romano family business, I was still the one in charge here. A flash of anger crossed his face. I meant you should have knocked. I'm handling important family business. Is plotting my murder part of family business now? My voice was dead calm. The color drained from Marco's face. What did you hear? I heard enough. I strolled to my father's whiskey bar and poured a drink. It was all very touching. Just then the study door swung open. Isabella walked in, wearing the one-of-a-kind Valentino wedding dress. My wedding dress. And now she was wearing it. Isabella feigned innocence, a hand flying to her mouth. Oh, my. Samara, I didn't know you were here. She turned to Marco, her eyes full of pouty charm. Darling, you didn't tell me she was still here. Marco's expression softened instantly. Isabella, you don't have to apologize. This will all be ours soon enough. I felt the room spin. A scene from my past life flashed in my mind. Me in this same dress, crying in front of the mirror. Because Marco had said Isabella looked better in white. White is too pure for you, Samara. Don't you think red suits you better? In the end, I wore a blood-red dress to my own blood oath ceremony. Like an animal for slaughter. And now Isabella was here wearing my wedding dress, parading her victory. That dress is beautiful, I said with a light laugh. Isabella froze, clearly not expecting that. Is it? I thought you'd be angry, she said, feigning concern. It was made for you after all. Angry? I shook my head. Why would I be? It suits you perfectly. I stepped closer, looking the dress over. You know, I always thought this dress was a bit much. Too heavy for me. Isabella's smile was a little tight. Really? But on you, it's perfect. My own smile grew wider. After all, a woman like you needs a good costume to play the part. The air in the room went still. Marco's face was like stone. Samara, what are you saying? I'm complimenting Isabella, I said, turning to him. Don't you think she looks beautiful in it? Marco's gaze snapped to Isabella, his eyes full of a fierce need to protect her. Of course she's beautiful. Isabella is beautiful in anything. The words were a clean, sharp knife in my gut. In our past life, he never once called me beautiful. Even in our wedding photos, he looked like he was at a funeral. Well, since you two are a perfect match, I won't disturb you. I turned to leave, but Marco stopped me. Wait. He took my favorite whiskey from the cabinet. Have a drink. He tried to make his voice gentle. We need to talk. I looked at the bottle. I remembered this from before. Every time Marco hurt me, he'd pull out the whiskey to make peace. As if a glass of liquor could wash away the wounds. No, thank you, I said, sharp and final. I don't drink. Marco frowned. You never used to be like this. People change, Marco. I met his eyes. Sometimes you change to survive. Isabella cut in. Perhaps Samara just needs time to adjust to the new arrangement. She sounded considerate, but her eyes were gleaming with triumph. Speaking of arrangements, I said, as if I'd just remembered. Marco, I need my mother's trust fund. The color drained from Marco's face. What trust fund? Don't play dumb. My voice turned cold. My mother put $50 million in a trust for me before she died. For my future. I need it now. Marco and Isabella exchanged a look. I saw the panic in their eyes. Marco scrambled for an excuse. That money, it was repurposed. For a critical family investment. What investment? He couldn't meet my eyes. The Tear of Sicily. I bought it for Isabella. It was a gesture of goodwill. To the Falcones. The Tear of Sicily. Auction price, $48 million. My mother's blood money, used by this man to buy a trinket for another woman. I felt a wave of dizziness and almost collapsed. Isabella proudly held up her left hand. The pink diamond glittered under the light. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Marco said only I was worthy of it. I stared at the diamond, remembering my mother's hand in mine as she was dying. Samara, I earned this money with my life. If you ever need to escape, don't hesitate. Now, the money she'd earned with her life was a decoration on another woman's hand. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to scream. I see. I turned and walked to the door. Marco called out from behind me. Samara. He came to my side, his voice low and laced with a threat. Don't forget your place, Samara. You're a Romano heir. Your weakness is our weakness. And right now, we need the Falcones. He slammed the study door shut behind me. The sound was like a gunshot. I stood in the hall, feeling more alone than ever. The home I grew up in now felt more suffocating than a prison. But I had the key. The name on the blood pact was changed. Soon, Marco would discover he hadn't gotten a tool, but the woman he truly wanted. And I would finally be free of this hell. Over the next few days, I started secretly selling off my luxuries. Limited edition bags, diamond necklaces, priceless pieces of art. Everything my mother had picked out for me. Now they were my ticket out of this hell. I moved the money through an offshore company into a Swiss bank account. Marco was oblivious. He was too busy planning a honeymoon with Isabella. On the third morning, Marco knocked on my door. Samara, I need to talk to you. His voice was a little softer than before, but his eyes were still empty. I opened the door. He was holding a check. This is for you, he said, handing it to me. The trust fund was used, but I'm not leaving you with nothing. I glanced at the number. $1 million. A generous compensation for my mother's $50 million legacy. The old me would have cried with gratitude, thinking he was planning for our future. The new me wanted to laugh in his face. Thank you for your generosity, Marco. I took the check. My calm surprised him. And I'm taking Isabella to Las Vegas, he continued. The family has some business to handle there. That's nice, I nodded. Enjoy yourselves. Marco frowned. My obedience was making him nervous. In my last life, my screaming fits were my only shield. He knew I'd call my father's old guard and watch his new empire burn. That fear kept me alive. This time, my silence was the weapon. You really don't mind? Why would I mind? I gave him a hollow smile. Business is business. Marco stared at me for a long time, his eyes full of confusion and unease. Maybe we should get the official family heir portraits done first, he said suddenly. It's important for the family's image. I knew he was testing me, trying to use a formal ritual to make sure I was still under his thumb. Of course, I said, still compliant. When? This afternoon. A flicker of pride crossed his face. I've booked the best photographer in Chicago. As we spoke, Isabella floated down the staircase. She was wearing a pink Chanel suit, looking sweet and innocent as a lamb. Darling, what are you two talking about? She linked her arm through Marco's. We're going to get our family portraits taken, Marco said, his voice softening for her. Isabella's eyes lit up. Really? Can I come? She turned to me, pretending to ask for permission. If Samara doesn't mind, of course. The old me would have refused. Point blank. A family portrait was sacred, for official members only. But now, I couldn't wait for her to go. Of course, I said. As our most important ally, Miss Falcone should be there. Marco's look grew even more complicated. He was starting to realize I had changed, but he had no idea what it meant. That afternoon, we arrived at the most exclusive photo studio on Michigan Avenue. The photographer was a German man named Andreas, who shot portraits only for the elite. Mr. Corvini, a pleasure, Andreas greeted us. We are shooting the official portrait for the family heir today, correct? Yes, Marco nodded. This is my fiancée, Samara Romano. The title felt like a sting. Even now, he still saw me as his property. And this lovely lady? Andreas gestured to Isabella. Isabella Falcone. Marco's voice went soft. A friend of the family. A friend of the family. That's what he called her in our past life, too. Until the day I died, I was the wife, and she was always the friend, but everyone knew which one he really loved. Before we begin, I need a prop, Marco said, walking over to an antique jewelry box. It held the Corvini family's ruby ring, an heirloom passed down for 5 generations. It symbolized the power of the family's matriarch. Last time, I didn't get to wear this ring until after we were married. And even then, I never held the power it represented. Marco picked up the ring and started walking toward me. Samara, this is... Wow! Isabella suddenly shrieked. That ring is gorgeous. Without asking, she snatched the ring right out of Marco's hand. Can I just try it on? She asked, blinking her big, innocent eyes. Marco's instinct was to stop her, but her pleading look made him soften. All right, but just to try. His indulgence was another tear in my heart. The ring of the Corvini matriarch slipped so easily onto another woman's finger. Isabella admired it on her hand. It's like it was made for me. Andreas started setting up the shot. Let's start with a few of Mr. Corvini and Miss Falcone, he suggested, while the ring is on her hand. I watched Marco and Isabella pose. They hugged, they kissed, they tangled themselves up in intimate ways. Andreas took at least 100 shots. In every single one, Marco's eyes were full of a tenderness I had never seen. And now for Mr. Corvini and Miss Romano. Andreas finally called me over. Just as Marco walked toward me, Isabella accidentally bumped into a piece of equipment. The expensive Hasselblad camera crashed to the floor, the lens shattering. Oh my God! I'm so clumsy! Isabella gasped, looking horrified. Andreas's face went pale. The camera we can't shoot anymore today. Marco frowned, but when he saw the tears welling in Isabella's eyes, his heart melted. It's fine. We'll reschedule, he soothed her. Don't blame yourself. I watched the whole scene with cold detachment. Isabella's accident. Marco's indulgence. The fact that I was, once again, forgotten. It was all exactly the same as last time. Back at the estate, Marco called me into his study. I have something for you. He pulled a plane ticket from his drawer. One way. Destination. Sicily. What is this? I asked. I think you need a vacation, Marco said, avoiding my eyes. We have a family villa in Sicily. You can rest there for a while. I looked at the date on the ticket. 3 days from now. This is exile, I said. It wasn't a question. Marco's face darkened. It's not exile. It's for your protection, he said coldly. Chicago isn't safe for you right now. And when will you come get me? Marco was silent for a long moment. After I've stabilized the alliance with the Falcone family here in the States. His answer confirmed it. He was shipping me off so he and Isabella could be together without any inconvenience. I understand, I said, taking the ticket. Thank you for the arrangement. My compliance made him uneasy again. Samara, he was cut off by the screech of tires outside. We went to the window and saw a black Lincoln sedan skid to a halt at the estate gates. A second later, the window rolled down and the black barrel of a gun appeared. Marco's face changed. Get down. The second the shots rang out, I saw Marco's true instinct. He didn't move toward me. He threw himself over Isabella, shielding her with his body, ready to take any bullet meant for her. He didn't hesitate. He shoved me into the heavy oak bookshelf. I slammed against the wood, and a rain of books crashed down on me. The sharp corner of one sliced my arm open. Blood bloomed across my white silk sleeve. A dark, ugly flower. Pain shot through my body, but it was nothing compared to the feeling of my heart being ripped to shreds. When the gunfire stopped, Marco didn't check on me. He checked on Isabella, who was trembling in his arms. Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? His voice was a raw mix of panic and devotion. No, Isabella sobbed. Marco, I was so scared. Don't be. I'm here. He kissed her forehead. I'll never let anyone hurt you. I'll never let anyone hurt you. That was the final blow. The last shred of hope I had for him died right there. I lay on the floor watching them cling to each other. Blood was pooling from my arm, staining the Persian rug a dark, ugly red. Marco hadn't even glanced my way. His entire world was Isabella. Marco, I called out, my voice weak. He finally noticed me. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Just a minute, Samara. Isabella is in shock. She was in shock. I was bleeding out. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by a despair so total it felt like drowning. 20 years. My whole life I thought one day Marco would finally see me. Now I knew. In his heart, I would never, ever matter more than Isabella. Not even when death was at the door. The family's bodyguards rushed into the study, securing the room. Boss, it was the Torino family. His second in command, Antonio, reported. They've pulled back. Marco nodded, still holding Isabella. Double the security on the estate, he ordered. And put a detail on Isabella. Full time. Antonio's eyes fell on me. Boss, Miss Romano is hurt. Only then did Marco bother to look at me, his eyes empty of concern. Get the doctor to look at it, he said, his tone like he was ordering someone to fix a broken chair. Then he scooped Isabella up into his arms and carried her toward the guest suite upstairs. You need to rest, he murmured to her, his voice so gentle it made me want to vomit. I was left alone on the study floor, staring at the ornate ceiling. The blood kept coming. The pain was making me dizzy, but my mind had never been clearer. This was Marco's love for me. When danger came, I wasn't even worth a look. 2 hours later, I was in the Corvini family's private clinic. The wound wasn't deep, but the blood loss made me look pale and frail. As the doctor stitched me up, I waited for Marco. I waited for 3 hours. Nothing. Miss Romano, a nurse finally came in. Mr. Corvini asked me to tell you something. Miss Falcone was badly shaken. She needs him. He'll check on you. Later. I was nearly killed, and he'd get around to me later. I lay on the cot, staring at the white ceiling tiles. Silent tears slid down my temples. The door finally opened late that night. It wasn't Marco. It was his mother, Letizia Corvini. An elegant, cold woman who cared about one thing and one thing only, family power. Samara, child. She sat by my bed. How are you feeling? Alive, I rasped. Letizia's perfectly sculpted eyebrows knitted together. Don't be dramatic. You are the future Mrs. Corvini. Am I? A dry, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Your son seems to have a different candidate in mind. A complex look passed over Letizia's face. Marco is young, easily distracted by a pretty face, she said. But the blood pact is signed. You are the lady of the Corvini house now. I looked at her, and I thought of the name I'd written on that pact. Letizia, if I told you a secret, would you help me? Her eyes narrowed. What kind of secret? The bride's name on the blood pact, it's not Samara Romano. The color drained from her face. What are you saying? It's Isabella Falcone, I said, looking right into her eyes. I changed it before I signed. Letizia sucked in a sharp breath. She understood the implications instantly. My family, the Romanos, held the keys to high society and legitimate business. The ports, the permits, the friendships of politicians. But the Falcones, they were the Corvini's equals in the shadows. A true powerhouse. An alliance with them wasn't just a takeover. It was a merger of titans. A super empire powerful enough to rule all of Chicago. For a woman like Letizia, that temptation was far greater than picking apart the bones of the Romano family, whose dawn was freshly in the ground. Why would you do such a thing? Letizia's voice was trembling, but the glint in her eye wasn't anger. It was ambition. Because I want to be free, I said plainly. And you want more power. Letizia was silent for a long time. I could practically see the gears turning in her head, calculating the profits of this new development. Child, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Perhaps this was fate. You've done the Corvini family a great service. I'll help you disappear. Seeing that triumphant look in her eyes, I had to laugh. Then I remembered Isabella's ruthless brother, the true heir to the Falcone fortune. He had the family assets locked down tight. In my past life, Isabella spent 20 years as nothing but a trophy. The only reason she craved Marco was for his wallet. He was her ticket to endless shopping sprees. And Letizia thought this marriage would get her a piece of the Falcone business? A fantasy. But none of it was my problem anymore. The next day, under Letizia's arrangements, I left the clinic. She provided a private jet and a bag full of cash. Where will you go? She asked. Los Angeles, I answered. I'm going to open an art gallery. Letizia nodded. Good. Art is a clean business. Before I left, I went back to the Romano estate one last time. Marco wasn't there. He'd taken Isabella to some high society event. I went into his bedroom and placed a copy of the blood pact on his bedside table. Next to it, I put the one-way ticket to Sicily. On top of the pact, I left a note. Short and sharp, just like the knife he'd stuck in my back. Marco, you got the bride you always wanted. Now live with her. As for me, I'm free. I walked out of the manor and didn't look back. I was done with that place. Done with the pain. 6 hours later, I was at an exit at LAX. The California sun was bright and warm. A world away from the cold gray of Chicago. I dragged my suitcase and disappeared into the crowd. No one would come looking for me this time. In Marco's mind, I was already dead. 3 months of grinding. Now, my gallery was open for business. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the opening of Rebirth Gallery. I stood in the most lavish art space in Beverly Hills, looking out at a crowd of LA's elite. Every painting here was my choice, from the edgy work of new artists to priceless master collections. Samara, this place is stunning, said Jennifer Walsh, a Hollywood producer, holding a glass of champagne. You have an incredible eye. Thank you, I smiled. I believe art should give people hope, not take it away. For the last 3 months, I'd buried myself in work. Up at 7 a.m., asleep at 2 a.m. Every day was a blur, but I had never felt so free. No more damn family feuds, no fake marriage games, and no Marco and his suffocating need for control. I was finally doing what I wanted to do. Miss Romano, my assistant Sarah came over. The LA Times wants an interview. They're curious about your past. Tell them my past is off limits. I only talk about the art. The old Samara Romano was dead. Now I was just a gallery owner who loved art. The party was going smoothly, until I saw him at the door. Marco Corvini. He was in a black suit, his face dark as a storm cloud. My hand tightened around my champagne glass. How did he find me? Marco walked straight toward me. The air crackled. Danger rolled off him in waves. The crowd parted like the sea. Everyone, please continue to enjoy the party, I said, trying to stay calm. I need to handle a private matter. I led Marco to my private office in the back. The second the door closed, he exploded. You goddamn bitch, Marco snarled, his hand locking onto my wrist. Do you have any fucking idea what you've done? His grip was iron. Pain shot up my arm, but I didn't flinch. I gave you what you wanted, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Isabella Falcone. She's your legal wife now, isn't she? Fire burned in Marco's eyes. You fucked with the blood oath. You tricked me into a contract with that empty-headed bitch. An empty-headed bitch? I raised an eyebrow. 3 months ago, you said she was the most beautiful, smartest woman you'd ever met. That's because I thought Marco was losing his cool. You thought what? My voice dripped ice. That you could have us both? You were my fiancé, he roared. You had no right to change the contract. I was never your fiancé. I shot back, yanking my hand free. I was a tool to lock down your family's power. Marco froze, stunned by my bluntness. And now you have the Falcone family's ports. Your family is 10 times stronger because of Isabella, I said. You should be on your knees thanking me. But Isabella, Marco's voice faltered. She knows nothing about the business. All she does is shop and go to parties. She's already burned through $10 million on useless designer crap. I almost laughed. She's the woman you chose, Marco. Enjoy her. Marco stepped closer, a dangerous glint in his eyes. I'm not letting you get away with this. He pulled out his phone. One call. That's all it takes to freeze all your accounts. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face a mask of calm. Go ahead. Try. Marco dialed a number. Antonio. Freeze every bank account connected to Samara Romano. Now. His voice was pure venom. I want her to learn the price of betraying the Corvini family. 10 minutes later, Marco was smirking at me. Now your gallery is dead in the water. Come back to Chicago. Be the wife you were supposed to be. Or you'll have nothing left in LA. Just then the office door opened. My lawyer, Jonathan Pierce, walked in. You have questions? Talk to my lawyer, I said, nodding at Jonathan. Marco's face darkened. A lawyer? Jonathan opened his briefcase and laid a document on the table. Mr. Corvini, under California law, your actions constitute malicious interference with business. His voice was cold and professional. My client has already been granted a temporary restraining order by the court. Marco's jaw tightened. A restraining order? What the hell are you talking about? Jonathan laid the document on the table. It prohibits you and yours from interfering with my client's business. No freezing accounts. No threatening suppliers. No sending your goons to her door. I saw Marco's hand tremble. Also, Jonathan continued, all of Miss Romano's assets have been transferred to an offshore trust. They are outside of U.S. jurisdiction. The color drained from Marco's face. He realized he had completely underestimated me. That's impossible, he muttered. How could you? 3 months is a long time, I said calmly. Long enough to hire the best lawyers and build a firewall. Jonathan looked at Marco, his eyes empty of warmth. Mr. Corvini, you have 2 choices now, he said. You can leave immediately, or I can call the police and have you arrested for harassment and making threats. Marco stared at me for a long time. His eyes were filled with anger, defeat, and something I had never seen before. Fear. He finally understood. I was no longer his to control. This isn't over, Samara, he said, turning for the door. You think you're safe, hiding in LA. Jonathan's voice was flat. Your power ends at the county line, Corvini. Get out. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's auction is about to begin. I was at a black tie art auction in a grand ballroom, the biggest in LA. I sipped champagne and mingled. As a new gallery owner, I needed to make connections. Miss Romano, what are your thoughts on the Picasso tonight? Asked William Morgan, a big-time collector. A masterpiece for sure, I said, studying the painting. But I'm more interested in the one over... My God, isn't that Samara Romano? A sharp voice cut through our conversation. I turned. Isabella Falcone was walking toward me in a gold, backless gown. The swell of her belly was obvious under the silk. For months pregnant, at least, a few Chicago socialites followed her, their eyes gleaming with a lust for drama. Isabella.
Igawe cool not.
Congratulations on the baby. Isabella made a show of stroking her belly, a smug, victorious smile on her face. Thank you, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Marco says this child will be the one true heir to the Corvini empire. Whispers started around us. They clearly knew the rumors about Marco and me. I heard Miss Romano used to be engaged to him, one woman murmured. But she got dumped, another replied. Men always want someone younger, prettier. Isabella's smile widened. Samara, I really do feel sorry for you, she said, her voice dripping with fake pity. It must be so painful to be cast out by your family. She was playing to the crowd. But you can't blame Marco. A man always ditches an old model for a new one. A few stifled laughs rippled through the onlookers. This LA high society crowd was eating up the Chicago gossip. The old me would have broken down, cried, tried to defend myself. But the new me just wanted to laugh. You're right, Isabella, I said, elegantly raising my glass. Anything past its prime should be discarded. Isabella froze, not expecting that. For example, I continued, 3 months ago, Marco told me you were the stupidest woman he'd ever met. Now you're carrying his child. It seems some men's tastes just get worse over time. The air went still. Isabella's face turned beet red. You're lying. Am I? I smiled. The last time we argued, Marco's exact words were, Isabella Falcone is an empty-headed doll, but her family is useful. It was true. He'd said it. Panic flashed in Isabella's eyes. That's impossible. Marco loves me. Love. My voice was pure scorn. My dear Isabella, a man like Marco Corvini doesn't love. He collects assets. Like he used you? Isabella spat back. Exactly, I admitted without shame. The difference is I walked. You stayed. And became his prize broodmare. Isabella was speechless with rage. The crowd was looking at me differently now. They hadn't expected this quiet, elegant gallery owner to have such a sharp tongue. Miss Romano has a point. A magnetic male voice cut in. I turned to see a tall, powerful man walking toward us. He had deep green eyes, a chiseled jawline, and wore a bespoke suit. He radiated a lethal charm. Allow me to introduce myself, he said, extending a hand. Dante Moretti. I took his hand. His grip was warm and strong. Samara Romano. I know, Dante said, his eyes full of admiration. Your gallery is the talk of the LA art scene. Isabella, not ready to give up, tried to start again. Samara, you think you can just move and escape your past? You'll always be the one who was left. Ma'am, it's time for you to leave. Dante's voice dropped, turning to ice. He didn't raise it, but the quiet threat in his eyes could freeze blood. Isabella took a step back instinctively. She could feel the danger coming from this man. I was just... We don't tolerate troublemakers, Dante said, his voice dangerously calm. Security. See her out. As if on cue, 2 men in sharp suits appeared at Isabella's side. Ma'am, please. Isabella looked like she wanted to fight, but seeing the scornful looks from the crowd, she turned and left in a storm of humiliation. Thank you, I said to Dante. My pleasure, he smiled. I don't like seeing an elegant woman bothered by someone so crude. The auction went on. I won a bid on a Monet. All night, Dante watched me from a distance. His gaze made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Respected. Back home, my burner phone buzzed. Only 3 people had this number. My lawyer, my assistant, and Marco. Text message glowed on the screen. Samara, we need to talk. Isabella is 4 months pregnant, and I've realized she's not fit to be the lady of the Corvini house. She's stupid, greedy, and useless. I need you back. We can start over. I stared at the message for a long time. Marco wanted me to come back and clean up his mess while his new woman was pregnant. His nerve was breathtaking. I deleted the message and turned off the phone. I was about to take a bath when the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw a familiar figure. Dante Moretti. I opened the door. He was holding my favorite bottle of whiskey. Sorry to drop by so late, he said. I saw the lights on in your gallery. I looked down at myself. Sure enough, there was a smudge of blue paint on my cheek. I'd been touching up a restored painting. Dante handed me the bottle, a gentle smile in his eyes catching the smudge on my cheek. A mark of a true artist. Miss Romano, Art Weekly wants to do a feature story on you. It was the week before Christmas, and my gallery was the center of the LA art world. In just 4 months, Rebirth had cleared $20 million in sales. I had finally proven it. I could do more than just survive without Marco Corvini. I could thrive. Tell them I'm free next week, I told Sarah. As I was arranging decorations for the Christmas exhibition, Sarah ran over, looking pale. Boss, bad news, she said. Marco Corvini landed in LA yesterday. The crystal ornament in my hand almost slipped. What? He and his pregnant wife are checked into the Beverly Hills Hotel, Sarah went on. Word is, the Corvini family is in deep trouble back in Chicago. My heart started to pound. Marco was in LA, with Isabella. What kind of trouble? I asked. Sarah pulled up a news feed on her tablet. The FBI raided several key Corvini properties. Word is, someone on the inside flipped. I looked at the picture of Marco's grim face on the screen, a knot in my stomach. No matter how I hated him, he was once my husband. Seeing his face plastered over the news, it stirred something cold and dead deep inside me. But it wasn't my problem anymore. That night, I was back in my apartment. The glittering lights of LA spread out below my floor-to-ceiling windows. It was paradise compared to the cold gloom of Chicago. I was making dinner when my phone rang. The caller ID read, Letizia Corvini, Marco's mother. I hesitated, then answered. Letizia. Samara, child. Her voice was heavy with exhaustion. We need your help. Help. I walked to the window. I thought you had the perfect lady of the house in Isabella. Letizia was silent for a long moment. That girl, she's a disappointment, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. She's a shallow, greedy child. When crisis hits, she just falls apart. I gave a cold laugh. This is the choice you all made. Samara, I'm begging you. Her voice was a plea. You're the only one who can save this family. You understand the business. You have the mind to handle this. I'm not part of the Corvini family anymore, I said, my voice like ice. My name is Romano, not Corvini. But you loved him once. Once? I cut her off. The key word there is once. After I hung up, I poured a glass of red wine. Staring out at the city, the irony was thick enough to choke on. For months ago, they couldn't wait to get rid of me. Now that they're in trouble, they remember I'm useful. People are pathetic. Around midnight, I was soaking in the tub. Suddenly, I heard a noise from the living room. I wrapped a robe around myself and walked out of the bathroom. A familiar silhouette stood in front of the window. Marco Corvini. He'd broken into my apartment. How did you get in? I demanded. Marco turned. He looked like hell. His handsome face was haggard, his eyes hollow with a deep desperation. Security systems aren't a problem for me, he said, his voice raspy. Samara, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I said, turning to leave. Get out. Wait. Marco grabbed my wrist. Do you know what I've been dreaming about? I shook him off. I'm not interested in your dreams. I dream of our past life, he whispered, his eyes wild with a desperate light. I dream we're still married. And in the dream I chose you, not her. Past life? My heart hammered against my ribs. Did Marco remember, too? I dream we have a child, and you're helping me run the family business, he went on. We were happy, Samara. 1,000 times happier than this. I stared at him, speechless. If he really remembered, did he know what he'd done? Did he know how I died? Then I wake up, and Isabella is lying next to me, Marco said, his voice filled with disgust. Every day she's complaining. The diamonds aren't big enough, the dresses aren't beautiful enough. The family is in crisis, and her first thought isn't to help. It's to run back to Italy. She's the woman you chose, I said coldly. I know I'm a bastard. Marco suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. I was blinded by power. I chose the wrong woman. But Samara, it's not too late. He looked up at me, his eyes begging. Come back. Help me fix this mess. We can start over. Start over? I looked down at Marco kneeling on my floor, and a tidal wave of rage washed over me. My voice trembled, each word a shard of ice. You murdered me, Marco. His face went white. What? You stood there. You watched our son put poison in my cup. You watched me die. And then you told me I was no longer useful. Tears streamed down my face. Marco was shaking from head to toe. He remembered. He really remembered. Samara, And now that Isabella is causing you problems, you remember how good I was? I wiped my tears away. What do you think I am? My voice was pure venom. A tool you pick up when you need it and toss aside when you're done? No. He stood up, reaching for me. I love you. I've always loved you. I stepped back, away from his touch. Love. I laughed. A broken, empty sound. If that's your definition of love, I would rather burn in hell than accept it. The desperation in Marco's eyes turned to despair. Then what do you want me to do? Get on my knees and beg for forgiveness? Kill Isabella? I want you out of my life, I said, pointing to the door. Take your problems, your stupid wife, and your fake apologies and disappear. Forever. Marco stood there for a long time. He never expected me to be this final. Samara, without you, the Corvini family will be destroyed, he said. One last attempt to appeal to our shared past. Then let it burn, I said, my voice dead calm. It's not my problem. The last bit of hope in Marco's eyes died. He walked slowly to the door, each step heavy. He paused at the threshold without turning back. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said, his voice barely a whisper. But Samara, if there is a next life, I hope we can meet again. There is no next life, I said cruelly. And there is no us. After Marco left, I leaned against the door, exhausted like never before. For a second, when he was on his knees, my heart had almost softened. Then I remembered the pain of my last life, the cold look in his eyes as he handed me the poison, and any pity I had vanished. Some wounds can never be forgiven. The next morning I made a decision. Sarah, book me a flight to Paris, I told my assistant. I need a vacation. Right away, boss. When do you want to leave? As soon as possible. I had to get out of LA for a while. Marco's presence had poisoned the air. I wanted to lose myself in the halls of the Louvre, to stand before the art that had saved me once before, to breathe air that wasn't poisoned by his memory. 2 hours later, Sarah came back with bad news. Boss, this is weird, she said, frowning. All private flights to Europe have been cancelled. Technical difficulties. My stomach sank. What about commercial flights? Same thing. The airport is claiming an air traffic control system failure, Sarah said, shaking her head. But I don't buy it. Of course it wasn't a technical failure. It was Marco pulling strings. He wanted to trap me, to force me to change my mind. That son of a bitch. Even in his desperation, he still had to control me. I pulled out my phone and called the airline's VIP line. Ms. Romano, my apologies, the agent said politely, but all European routes are temporarily grounded. When will they be running again? We're not sure. Could be a week. Could be longer. I hung up, a wave of frustration washing over me. Marco had successfully trapped me in Los Angeles. Just like in my last life, he always found a way to manipulate my world. Even now, when we had nothing to do with each other, he wouldn't let me go. That afternoon, I was alone in the gallery, sorting through the collection. Christmas was almost here, but I was in no mood to celebrate. Marco's reappearance had dragged up too many painful memories. Need a hand. A familiar voice. I turned. Dante Moretti was standing in the doorway. He was wearing a dark gray cashmere coat and holding a bouquet of white roses. Dante. I was surprised. What are you doing here? I heard you ran into some trouble, he said, walking in and handing me the roses. With your flight. I took the bouquet. The scent was light and elegant. How did you know? He gave a slow smile. In this city, Samara, nothing happens that I don't know about. I looked at him closely, a question forming in my mind. Dante, who are you, really? He was quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly. I'm the head of the Moretti family, Don. My blood ran cold. The biggest mafia family in Los Angeles. I took a step back. Don't be afraid, Dante said, his voice soft. I'm not him, Samara. I'm here to protect you. Protect me? Why? Dante took a step closer, his eyes full of sincerity. Because I admire your talent and your courage, he said. You escaped the shadows of Chicago and built your own kingdom here in LA. That's impressive. I looked at him, my feelings a tangled mess. Another mafia boss. Was I doomed to be caught up with these dangerous men forever? I heard the Corvini family is what's keeping you from Europe, Dante continued. They think they can trap you, force you back to Chicago. You know Marco's plan? I know a lot of things, Dante said, a cold light in his eyes, including the fact that he broke into your apartment last night and got on his knees to beg you to come back. I drew a sharp breath. Dante's intelligence network was even more powerful than I'd imagined. You've been watching me? I've been protecting you, Dante corrected. Since the day you arrived in LA, the room started to spin. Why? Because the first time I saw you, I knew you were different. Dante's voice grew softer. Not because of your beauty, because of the light in your eyes. What light? The hunger for freedom, Dante said. I've met too many women trapped by power and money, but not you. You gave up everything for your freedom. That impressed me. I stared at Dante, not knowing what to say. His sincerity was warm, but it also scared me. I had just escaped one crime family. I didn't want to get pulled into the whirlpool of another. I know what you're worried about, Dante said, as if he could read my mind. You're afraid history will repeat itself, that you'll become a pawn in another man's power game. I nodded. But I am not Marco Corvini, Dante said, his eyes firm. I admire your independence, not your dependence. He took a key from his pocket. This is the key to my estate in Malibu, he said. It will be safe there for Christmas. No Marco, no media, just the peace and quiet you want. I looked at the key, tempted. I needed a place to hide from Marco's obsession. You won't be there? I asked. Dante's smile was gone. His voice was serious. This is a safe house, Samara, not a cage. I hesitated for a long time, then took the key. Thank you. You're welcome, Dante said, turning to leave. And, Samara, what? If the Corvini family bothers you again, you tell me. His voice turned to ice. In LA, no one touches the people I protect. That night, I drove out to Malibu. Dante's estate sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The modern architecture blended perfectly with the natural landscape. It was luxurious but peaceful. Most importantly, it had military-grade security. Marco's men would never get in. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window in the master bedroom, looking out at the endless ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks in a steady rhythm. Moonlight glittered on the water, beautiful enough to take my breath away. For the first time since coming to LA, I felt truly safe. It wasn't the $1,000,000 view or the high-tech security. It was the respect. He offered me shelter, not a cage. A choice, not a command. I took a deep breath of the sea air and felt a sense of release I hadn't known was possible. Maybe this was what true freedom felt like. On Christmas morning, I woke to the gentle sound of the waves. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warm and comforting. It was the quietest Christmas I'd had in years. No family politics, no fake pleasantries. Just pure peace. I walked out onto the terrace to find a beautiful breakfast laid out on the table. Fresh strawberries, warm croissants, and a pot of fragrant Blue Mountain coffee. "Good morning, Miss Romano." The housekeeper, Elena, a graceful Italian woman in her 50s, approached. "Mr. Dante asked that we prepare breakfast for you." "Where is he?" I asked. "Handling some urgent business," Elena smiled. "He said he didn't want to disturb you. He wanted you to sleep in." A warmth spread through my chest. The Marco from my past life never considered my feelings. He'd wake me in the middle of the night for so-called family business. Dante, on the other hand, was protecting even my sleep. In the afternoon, a black Maserati pulled up to the estate. Dante got out holding several gift boxes. "Merry Christmas, Samara," he said, handing them to me. I opened the first box. Inside was a Tiffany diamond necklace. But these weren't just any diamonds. They were rare pink diamonds, each one cut to perfection. "This is too much," I said, trying to refuse. "Don't say no," he said, his voice a low murmur. "Beautiful things belong with a beautiful woman." The second box held a small Van Gogh sketch. "A study for sunflowers?" My breath caught. "Dante, this belongs in a museum." "It belongs to you now," Dante said, his eyes full of affection. "I know how much you love his work." The third box was the smallest. Inside was a delicate silver key. "What's this?" "The key to this estate," Dante said calmly. "Starting today, this is your home, too." My hand trembled. "Dante, I can't accept these." "Why not?" he said, stepping closer. "Are you afraid of being in my debt?" "I'm afraid of owing any man anything ever again," I said honestly. Dante watched me for a long moment. "Samara," he said, his voice dropping low, "these aren't chains. They're gifts. From a man who wants nothing more than to see you happy. And safe." My eyes started to well up. Not since my mother died had I felt this kind of unconditional care. That evening, Dante's family members came to the estate for Christmas dinner. To my surprise, their attitude was nothing like the Corvini families in Chicago. "Samara, I hear your gallery is a huge success," Dante's sister Lucia said warmly. "I've been thinking about investing in the LA art scene myself." "Miss Romano, your insights into contemporary art are truly admirable," Dante's uncle Roberto said, raising his glass to me. "No one treated me like an outsider. No one questioned my presence. They accepted me because Dante chose me, but more than that, they respected me for who I was." "They like you," Dante said after dinner, as we walked along the beach. "They're very kind," I said sincerely. "Nothing like the Corvini family?" Dante finished for me. I nodded. "Every family has its own culture," Dante said. "The Corvinis believe in fear and control. The Morettas believe in respect and loyalty." We walked on the soft sand, the waves lapping gently at the shore. Dante looked mysterious and handsome in the moonlight. "Dante, why did you choose to help me?" Couldn't help but ask. "Because I see in you something I want," he said, stopping to face me. "What?" "Honesty," he said, his eyes glowing with sincerity. "In a world full of lies and deception, you are one of the few people who would fight for their true self." My heart began to race. "And courage," Dante continued. "You escaped from a gilded cage and started over in a strange city. That takes tremendous courage." His words reminded me of the struggle of the past few months. From Chicago to LA. From a protected princess to an independent businesswoman. Every step had been a challenge, but I had made it. On New Year's Eve, Dante threw a huge party at the estate. LA's high society was all there, but the atmosphere was relaxed and fun, without the tense political undercurrent of Chicago parties. 10, 9, 8, 7 The crowd began the countdown to the new year. Dante stood beside me. I could feel the warmth radiating from him. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! Fireworks exploded over the ocean, each one a breathtaking burst of color and light. Just then, Dante's head of security, Carlo, walked up and whispered something in his ear. Dante's expression turned serious in an instant. "What is it?" I asked. "Uninvited guests," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. "It's been handled." My stomach dropped. "Was it Marco's people?" Dante nodded. "They wanted to give you a New Year's surprise." A chill of fear ran down my spine. Even here, in Dante's fortress, Marco wouldn't leave me alone. His obsession had turned into madness. "Don't worry," Dante said, gently touching the back of my hand. "No one can hurt you here." The fireworks were still blooming in the sky, but I was no longer in the mood to watch. Marco's shadow was a ghost that wouldn't go away, a constant reminder of my painful past. "Samara," Dante suddenly took my hand. "Come with me." He led me to the estate's private terrace, which had the best view of the ocean. Away from the noisy crowd, it was just the two of us. The moonlight fell on Dante's face, making him look like a god from a Greek myth. "You're shaking," he noticed. "I'm just afraid he'll hurt you again?" Dante finished my sentence. I nodded, and tears I couldn't stop began to fall. "I thought I was strong," I choked out, but Marco stomped on my dignity again and again, until I had no hope left. Dante gently wiped my tears away. "That was the past." His voice was full of power. "Now you're free." Dante suddenly took my shoulders, his gaze burning and deep. The fireworks still lit up the sky behind him, casting his face in brilliant light. "I'll handle him." His voice was a low, deadly promise. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. "Forget the art deals and the business, Samara. You're mine now, mine to protect."